Welcome back. Against my better judgment, I am going to try to solve some more chess puzzles, so feel free to tag along. Just warning up front, my confidence level is very low after the last couple of videos in which I did very poorly. Let's see what we can do today. Okay. I am playing with the white pieces, and I have only 2 knights against a queen and a bishop. Clearly, I can capture the bishop right now, but then the queen would take it back, so I think that's a bad idea. I mean, I can also get a 3rd knight right now. I could get a promote with check. Wait, is that the puzzle? If I promote with check with a knight, then where does the king go? Well, it could go here, but that's it, because my knights are cutting off these squares. My new knight would be cutting off this one. My king is cutting off this one. I guess the king could also come here. But if it went to h7, I could check again here, and then it would be starting to run out of squares. I would have to go into the corner, and then I could checkmate it here. Wow. But if I promoted to a knight and it went this way, still I could come back here and check it, and my first 2 knights would be cutting off this, and my new knight would be cutting off these 2, so it would have to either go back where it was, in which case I would fork the king and the queen, perhaps, or it would have to go here, in which case I would check it with that knight, maybe. I don't know. It actually looks like I might be able to checkmate that king or fork those 2 pieces if I were to have a knight right now. I don't see anything else that I can do, honestly. I can check with this knight, but either the bishop or the queen will capture it. I can attack the queen with this knight, but the king will capture it. And I'm pretty sure that if I promote to anything that's not a knight, therefore not check, say I promote to a queen, I might be in danger of being checkmated here pretty quickly. There's a check. I don't know, but I think the promotion has to be it. But before I do, I have this check without promoting, and my king is then of course cutting off these squares. My knight would be hitting that one, this other knight would be hitting this one, and that would leave the king 2 squares to go to without the promotion. Maybe that's it. If I check here and the king goes back, then I can check here. No, but then the king just comes back where it is, and when I promote, it's not check. I'm going to promote to a knight, and it's going to be wrong, because... Oh, that was right. Okay. Confidence level's gone up just a little bit. Okay, now what did I say I could do now? I could check here with either one of these knights, but I think the first one is better because those first 2 knights are cutting off these squares, right? I can't yet get the fork on the king and queen, although it would be nice if I had a knight that could move here right now. Those are the only 2 checks right there, right? The only 2 safe checks. I can check with this knight down here on g3, but then the queen just takes it. I think I check here because my first two knights cut off those squares, and then my newly placed knight on f6 would cut off these two, which would force the king one way or the other. If it went toward the queen, I would be able to check with this e7 knight over to g6, and I think that would be mate. And if it went back, that knight would, the f6 knight would be cutting off this square, so I think that check, which would hit those two, would be mate. Okay, it went that way. So is that mate? No, because the bishop and the queen are both guarding that spot. Okay, so I have to be very careful. What about this? Because my e4 knight is cutting off these two squares. I have to click them because it's very difficult to visualize all the squares cut off by the knights. And my f6 knight cuts off these squares. So I think knight to g6 is mate. Oh, wow. And the themes include advanced checkmates. Yes. Endgame tactics, I guess. Knight outpost? No, because I don't think any of those counted as a knight outpost, do they? I don't know. And mate in 3? I feel like that was more than 3 moves. I don't know. Mating net? Sure. Okay, well, I'm impressed that I got that one. Or maybe just lucky. Okay. I'm playing with the white pieces. And I'm down a rook and a minor piece. Look at that. And a bunch of pawns. My opponent has a minor piece and a rook beyond what I have, plus 4 extra pawns. We each have 3 pawns over here on this half of the board, but on the left half of the board, the opponent has 4 extra pawns. I'm guessing that move was a blunder. This knight move here was a blunder. The first moves of puzzles often are, but I don't know what else they should have done instead. Maybe just pushed one of those pawns. Or maybe come in here to guard something in there. I don't have any checks in this position because the king is blocking the progress of my h7 pawn. My queen, oh, I do have a check. I almost didn't see it. I do have a check. And the opponent can't get out of it because this pawn is protected. And the pawn is guarding that square. And my queen would be hitting this square. So the only options would be to block with the pawn or the rook, I think. That's why that was a blunder. Because over here the knight was guarded and it would have protected this square. But now it's out of position. So check. The knight can't get in the way. The queen can't get in the way because they don't move that direction. The king can't move. Pawn moves. I take it with check. The rook has to block and I take it with check. And I don't think it matters which order they block in. That's got to be it, right? There's nothing else. Oh, I forgot about that pawn. Okay. But still, there's no other piece that can block except those two. How about that? And that's a new puzzle that doesn't have a theme. I'm going to put mate in 3+. I almost didn't see that because, as we know, if you've been watching any of my videos, I focus my pieces toward the king in my mind, and I have trouble seeing, especially the queen that's going away from the action. This angle over here is the opposite direction, so I almost didn't see that. Good thing I was talking my way through it. All right, well, I've solved 2 puzzles. Confidence level rising a little higher. All right. I am playing with the black pieces. Let's see, we each have 2 rooks, we each have a queen, My opponent has an extra minor piece, or this one maybe. And we each have 3 pawns. So my opponent is up a piece. My queen is in danger. Oh. Maybe that was the blunder here, because they should have taken my queen. Right? Because clearly the opponent was just now in check here from my queen. So I don't know where my queen came from or why it was placed on that position. Maybe the knight moved out of the way of it or something. And that's how they got in check here. But instead of taking with the rook, which I think most reasonable people would have done, even at my level, they moved out of check. Okay, so that allows my queen to live another day. And it allows for more checks, maybe. I do have this check, which gets my queen out of danger. Oh, I just saw another one. But I was looking at the angles away from the king, like I'd learned from that last puzzle. But I also have this check down here on h2, guarded by my rook. And that's mate. Wait, is this mate in 1? Because this rook over here, my f-rook cuts off these squares. And my h-rook cuts off these squares, and my queen down there would cut off all of these. And they don't have any piece that can get to it. Is it a mate in 1? Oh my goodness. And I still only got 5 points because of how long it took me to realize there was a mate in 1 there. I'm going to add the theme to that one. This one also is a fairly new puzzle. And it's rated 2276 so far. Okay. I almost didn't see that, but that's mainly because my confidence levels were shot from the last couple of puzzle sessions. So, but they're a little higher now, because I just got 4 in a row. 3 in this video, I think. 1 left over from the last video, maybe. I'm going to click next, even though it may destroy all my progress. I just gained, I think, 15 points in this video, if I'm counting right. And I could lose like 17 points in one puzzle, I think. Okay. Well, for whatever reason, the way that puzzles are constructed, we know that that wasn't their best move. I don't know what their best move would have been. Okay, both of us have a rook, both of us have a queen, and both of us have a minor piece, but they're up in exchange here. A rook for a bishop. They have a rook for my bishop. But I could even up that exchange right now by capturing the rook with my bishop, and they could capture back. And then we would each have a rook, queen, and a minor piece. But very rarely are puzzles about evening up an exchange or correcting a material imbalance. Very rarely, in my experience. But it might be a good first move, I don't know. I don't have any checks in this position, or do I? No. I have this, which is protected by my queen, but the rook would take it, then my queen would be in danger. So that makes me think that this should be my first move. The bishop for the rook. I don't know whether they would capture with the pawn or the queen, but then I would have this. That's a check. If they captured the rook with the pawn, then this would be an obvious follow-up move, right? If I captured the rook and they took back with the pawn, then bishop captures e3 would be obvious, pinning the queen to the king and winning it on the next turn. But if they take back with the queen, how good is that? It's a check, but it's no longer threatening to win the queen. The king could move out this way or this way. Let's see if I do that first, the rook takes, threatening my queen and getting out of danger. So that's got to be the first move. There's nothing else, right? I don't have any checks. This just loses a bishop. There's nothing here. I'm not in danger down here just yet because I would take, and then if they took, I would take again, and they would lose 2 pieces for 1. So that's not in their cards right now. This piece can't do anything. That's one reason that opening principles are to develop all your pieces before you start attacking. I don't think it's this first, because that obviously just loses a queen for a pawn. I'm going to take the rook. Okay, and they did take with the queen, which I thought was their better move, because now they escape this pin. Okay, but now the question is, should I take with the queen or the bishop? I think I should take with the bishop, because if I take with the queen, and they take back, and I take back with check, we've exchanged queens, but now we each have 1 rook and 1 minor piece, and once they move out of check, I think they're going to have time to get this knight out some way or another, and then their rook has been freed. But if I take with the bishop, they move out of check. I assume they won't take it. They're going to move out of check. And then what do I do? I mean, that might be the end of the puzzle. Some puzzles end after one good move. But I always want to know, the one way you know it's the good move is to see how the opponent would respond. And here, I don't know which would be best for them, to move out of check one way or the other. But again, I think now that we've won back the exchange and we're even on material, I think gaining this pawn, because I am still down 2 pawns, and for this check, I would still be down a pawn. They would move out of check. I could follow with my rook check here, but then they can come after the bishop, and then I have to run away with it. And we're even on material, and once I run away with the bishop, they get the knight out either there or there, and their rook is freed, and they're still up a pawn. So that's why I think the queen is not the best idea. But the bishop, they just move out of check. And then, and then do I go here to force the queen trade? But that results in the same thing, doesn't it? I think they have to take my queen, then I take with my rook and put them in check. It's too bad there's not a way to move that queen first and then put my rook there. I'm going to take the pawn. I've spent too much time on it already. Okay, that was it. And they did move out of check that way. But that is encouraging because they're trapped in the corner now, because my bishop cuts that off from them. That encourages me a little bit that there might be a decent follow-up here. I just don't know what it is. We talked about this. If they take, and I capture with my rook, I'm threatening mate, but then they get the knight out and their rook's covering that square. So there has to be something better, or there ought to be something better. Maybe it's moving my bishop somewhere and then threatening mate here. For example, I can pull my bishop all the way back, which continues to guard the spot next to the king on g1. They could block the bishop with this pawn, but then that's mate. So if I bring the bishop back, though, again, they just developed the knight. What about here? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Putting the bishop on c1, threatening mate on e1. Because then if they move the knight, I can capture. Now, if I go there, they still move the knight, don't they? They can move, if they move the knight, so the rook is guarding. No, because the bishop's blocking the rook. Right, okay, so if I go there, it doesn't matter if they move the knight, because I still have this. And the rook can't get there. Okay. What else could they do if I put the bishop there? Again, if they move the knight, I have a mate down here. Yes, they would block with the queen, but then I would take it. Okay, so bishop to c1, threatening mate here. I think they have to then bring their queen down to block that, and then when they do that, I take this and win the rook. I don't think anything else makes sense. Because if I move the bishop anywhere else, the knight moves and the rook covers the back rank. Oh, that was it. Oh, and the queen went over there. I thought the queen was going to go here. Okay, does that make a difference? Well, it still keeps me from the checkmate here. But it allows me to win this pawn. And then the rook for the bishop. I think that has to be it. And now that we've gone through all that, I just take the rook for the bishop, right? And then I'm left up on material. I mean, I could take another pawn, but then the rook gets out. Oh, wow. And I got 6 points for that. How did I get 6 points and it took me that long? Oh my goodness, that puzzle was rated 2380. Maybe that's why I got 6 points, because it's rated a full 100 points higher than my rating. I'm not even going to try to suggest a theme on that. That took a lot of calculation. Oh my goodness. I've got to sit back. That was exhausting. I'm going to be 50 in a couple of months, and my brain is getting tired. Okay. I should keep going. I'm still 2 points lower than where I started my really poor video from last week. And I'm still 7 points lower than where I got in the middle of that video before I lost all the points. I think 2287 was my peak. I'm going for it. I'm out of breath right now. Okay, white to move. My bishop is pinned. I can see that. So I can't move my bishop, like, for example, here. And my opponent is about to do really painful stuff to me down here on a2. With their rooks doubled up like that. However, as we know, if we've been playing chess any length of time, even a pinned piece still counts as check. The king cannot go there. So if I were to capture here, that rook is protected. We do know that about pinned pieces. So I am considering rook captures f7 check. My other rook would cut off these squares. And of course, this square is guarded by the bishop. And that would force the king to move to g 8. I'm working on that. Oh, I need to do a video on those coordinates where the coordinates pop on the screen and you have to click, see how many I can get right. Okay. Okay, so the king would be forced to move to g8. Then I would have check here. Rook to g4 check, which would cut that off. And my rook on f7 would be cutting off this and that, so it would force the king. These squares wouldn't be cut off anymore. It would force the king into the corner. And that would not quite be mate because, sorry, the king would be forced into the corner, and I would have a rook here and a rook here. If I checked down on f8, the king, these two would not be guarded anymore. The g7 and h7 wouldn't be off limits to the king anymore. Well, g7 still would be from this rook back here on the g file. But the king would be able to come up here if I checked on f8 with the f rook. I still think that's the best first move. You know what I just saw? When the king moves out of that check, because that's its only legal move, then anywhere I put that rook is going to be check from this bishop. At which point the opponent could take the bishop. So that's not good. Okay, what if I check here, the king moves here, I come down this way with my rook, which is check from that bishop. Then when they take the bishop, I can take the rook. And if they take back, I take back, and I've got a whole rook left. That might be it, but I'm going to do this first. Oh, that was it. Okay. This puzzle's first move relied on us knowing that this still counts as protecting that square from the king. It wouldn't protect that square from any other piece. Any other piece, a queen could have captured here and not have been in danger from this pinned bishop. But kings can't. Okay. So now, what about my idea of coming down here? Is that ridiculous? Because if I go with my original plan of checking on g4, the king goes into the corner as we said, it has to. And then if I check again, it comes out of the corner. And I don't have a good follow-up check, do I, at that point? I could check again here, but then the king goes there. I think this might be the best move right now. Again, counting on our knowledge that this pinned bishop can offer check. And so that rook would not be able to capture our rook. In fact, it might be forced to capture our bishop, or nearly forced. Now, obviously, if I move this, the king could just move over to get out of check, right? To one of those squares. But if it did that, I would win this rook for free. So that's why I think if I go here, this rook captures the bishop, and then I take the rook. Oh. It was a gamble. Oh, but I only lost 5 points. Is that because I got the first 2 moves right? Okay. All right. Was it what I thought at first? No. Okay. So I would have gotten it wrong anyway. Was it this? No, because then they would just take the bishop. What was it? Okay, that's obvious in hindsight. I can't be upset about that. It was an obvious mate in 2. After the first move. I don't think the first move was very obvious, but the second move should have been. It was a simple ladder mate, since this piece continues to be protected by the bishop. Okay, I can't be too upset by that. And that puzzle was rated 2100. I don't know if I should do another one. My confidence levels came down a little bit. I'm going to, though, because I have the time and I am paying for unlimited puzzles. So I might as well use them. Okay. What do we have here? We're about to get checkmated down here. If we get this rook off the back rank. Right now, if I do something like this and it doesn't work, I'm getting checkmated. So if we move this rook anywhere, we have to make sure that it works. So if we did, for example, rook captures h4 check, I think the king just gets out of check there, or here even. If I check with the pawn to g6 check, the king just moves out of check, I think. Now, I mean, it could do something incredibly obtuse, like moving here, and then I would capture this and it would be mate. But I can't count on it doing that, even though one of the puzzles in that bad video, you had to know that they would make not the best move in their position. You had to know that they would take that bishop and allow the further complications. But in this one, I'm still not going to count on them making the worst move, because check, pretty sure if they brought the king forward, then I would capture here and that would be mate. But they're not going to bring the king forward, I am certain. They're going to go back to one of these two squares. And I would assume that if I checked with the pawn, they would go back to that one so that this wouldn't be check. And then they would checkmate me on the back rank. But I just saw something else. I can take that pawn with the other rook. Yes, I can. I can take the pawn with the G rook, but then they can just get in front of this pawn. I don't think they would go back because my rook's in a battery lined up. I would come down here and I would end up winning that one, or at least trading for it. But that's why I think they would come in front of the pawn. I think. And then I'm not going to follow here because their pawn guards that square. But that does look like a promising first move. But maybe that's what I do after this check. After I check with my pawn to g6 and they move to the back, I can take this pawn and be preparing this, and at the same time protecting this. Okay. Am I gonna do that first or this first? I think this first results in the king in front of my pawn, and that's bad. I want the pawn there. And then, yes, if the king comes forward, if the king comes forward, yes, this is mate. But if the king goes back, as I expect it to after the pawn check, I think I can just take this pawn, preparing to go to the end. That's what I'm going to try. But my confidence levels are low. Oh, thank goodness. I needed that little boost. Okay. Now do I go here? Because, again, if I move the back rook off the back rank, the game's over. So we don't want to do that. But I think we can prepare this because I'm threatening checkmate. My pawn cuts off these squares. Okay, they're moving to escape this way. Should I check anyway? That's the question now. I should check anyway, I think. And my reasoning is that once they move out, they would be forced to move to E7. Then I would check on E1. And I don't know where they would go, but I would win that rook. Okay. I don't want to take it now because that just loses a rook. I want to check here. And then no matter where their king goes, I win that rook, while this one still guards the back rank. Okay. And now it has to be that, right? Unless there's a mate. I don't think there's a mate, so it has to be winning that rook. Okay, and I knew it was with that one because if I move this one, I'm getting checkmated down here. Pretty sure. Okay, back to 2280. Theme doubled rook. I guess I'll click thumbs up for that. Okay. Next. This is longer than my average puzzle solving video, but I had a lot of ground to make up. A lot of ground. Alright, black to move. That's me. I'm playing with the black pieces. We are even on material for once. Seems like these puzzles normally have us down on material. This one we each have 4 pawns, 2 rooks, and light squared bishops. I am noticing that my light squared bishop cuts off these squares from the king. That might turn out to be significant. I learned pretty early to look for stuff like this whenever a pawn moves around the king and I have a piece that moves diagonally. That's not something I don't think I've learned. Maybe it's been reinforced in the past few months that I've been devoting study to this, but that might turn out to be significant, that the king can't move. Maybe. I don't know. I know that this bishop isn't doing much from where it is, but I do need to watch the light squares, moving my rooks, for example, or trying to double up here because the bishop covers that. I was going to say I could maybe trap the bishop by putting this pawn here, but it could just go there and hit that one from behind. But that wouldn't... Wait. That actually might be a good idea. That prevents the bishop from patrolling the rest of the diagonal because my rook's guarding that square. So if I put the pawn here, that bishop could move here to aim at the other pawn, but it's out of the action. It doesn't guard any of these squares anymore. And is it going to be worth it to want to put my rook here? It might be. Okay, another thing I'm noticing, besides the bishop trapping these, I'm also noticing that this rook can't move. The F1 rook cannot move, and I could win it right now. Well, not right now, because if I move my bishop to threaten it, then I can be... No, I can't be checked because my bishop guards that square too. Okay. And I can't be checked over here because of my pawn. So as long as my bishop stays on this diagonal, I'm not getting checked on E8. And I can't get checked by their bishop because I'm on a dark square. I can't get checked from in front because of the pawn. Okay. So that makes me wonder if bishop to B5 isn't the best move because that rook is trapped. But then what are they going to do? I think that has to be the question. What do they do once I put my bishop there? Where's their bishop going to go? It could come threaten the back of this pawn, I guess, but then I take the rook for the rook. I mean the rook for the bishop, right? I suppose they could threaten here. But then I would take, and they would take. I don't know. That might be what they would do if I moved the bishop to b5. They might just move this rook over so that if I took their rook, they would take mine. Maybe. I'm going to think about it with a pause. Okay, unpaused. This puzzle might be beyond my level. Because I do know some of the elements involved. I know doubled rooks. I know the bishop cutting off these squares from the king might have something to do with it. The rook being trapped might have something to do with it. This bishop patrolling here is keeping me from doubling my rooks on the 7th rank, or the 2nd rank, since I'm playing with the black pieces. Because that would come in really handy to be able to double rooks here to come across. So I see several okay moves, like threatening the rook with the bishop, blocking their bishop with my pawn move so that I could double. And it might be all of those just in a different order. That's one thing that I realized might be possible. It might be this, blocking their bishop, and then this, threatening their rook. And then when they come after my rook, doubling up here. It might be that, or it might be in yet a different order. And since we're even on material, I move here. If they go there, I take their rook. They take my rook. And then I bring the bishop back. And then we're still even on material. But if they take that rook off the back rank there, this one can go to the back rank before I pull the bishop out. Maybe that's it. Here, if they threaten this rook, I take theirs. Now, they could take back and I've won an exchange. But if they take here, I go here, protecting my bishop and exploiting their now unprotected back rank. And then when I pull that bishop, it's mate, wherever I pull the bishop. I'm going to try it. I've spent too much time on this. That was it. Oh, they went there. Will it still work the other way? If I capture and they take this rook, then I go there and prepare to pull the bishop back. Because I'm pretty sure it's not taking this rook, because then it's an even trade. Okay. Now the question is, do I pull the bishop back first or play the rook first? I think I play no, I have to play the rook first, otherwise they get back to the back rank. That was right. Okay, they've given themselves an escape square. Oh wait, I can take with en passant, right? Because right now if I check, they just get out. But I can take with en passant. I can take that pawn, but then they can still get out. I can win their bishop, though. Wherever I pull my bishop to... Sorry, not there. Here. If I pull my bishop out to any place, it's check from my rook, discovered check. And if I put it on d3, once they move out of check, I win their bishop. I don't see anything better, because now that they've moved this pawn, we're not threatening mate anymore, right? Because the king has this escape square and I can't guard it with the bishop. So I think it has to be here to threaten their bishop. Because I can't threaten their rook. It's on a dark square. I'm going to try that. Oh, that was it. And now I get their bishop, right? And I'm up a piece. Because if I do another check, then I'm in trouble. 2285. Oh, we're getting close. One more puzzle and it will be my highest puzzle rating of all time. Can I do it? Excuse me. We did 4 in a row to start this video, then lost one, and now we've done 2 in a row again. Oh, it's probably a bad idea. Probably a bad idea. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're even on material. Exactly even to the placement of the pawns. 2 knights, 2 knights, 1 rook, 1 rook. But their rook cannot come out. I feel like that is significant. That their rook is not in the game right now. Now my rook might not be in the game either. I do have a check. I can check here, which that's why it's significant that their rook cannot get out. But in the event of that check, I think they just move out of check. But then I win the rook. I mean, that might be it. It might be that simple, because they wouldn't be able to move out this way, because that would be check from both knights. They could move out of check to the H file, or they could move to G1, right, if I'm down here, or they could move to F1, sorry, G8 or F8. But then no, I can't do that, can I? Yes, I can, because even though their knight can take, my other knight can take, and then I win their rook. So I think their trapped rook was something that I needed to notice. And that would leave me with a knight and a rook at the end of this, and it would leave them with only 1 knight. Is there anything better? I don't have any captures. Like, I can't go for the rook right now because their knight's guarding that square. Right? I can't... I mean, I could capture that pawn, but then that lets their rook out this way. I could go there and lose a knight for no reason. I could check here and lose a knight for no reason. I think the first thing I saw it has to be it. Oh, fingers crossed, because again, my confidence levels have flagged a little bit. That was it. Okay, now both my knights are pointing at the C7 square, which attacks the rook. I think that's just kind of obvious right now. I was about to say, does it matter which one goes there? Because the king won't be able to take the other one because they protect each other. So does it matter? Does it matter? Do I have any other checks, first of all? I do not. I cannot check with either knight. Now, both knights can go here, but I don't think that threatens anything significant. In fact, that would let the rook out. And I want to say it's this knight because it's in danger from the king, right? But I think in a game it actually wouldn't matter, because once I move the other knight there, that knight's not in danger anymore. They take me, I take. But there wouldn't be another move in the puzzle if one of those moves was just as good as the other. That's the way puzzles work. There's never either way works. One of them is obviously better than the other one. Oh my goodness. Okay. Either way, it doesn't matter. Whichever knight moves to this square attacks both the rook and is attacked by the knight. And is protected by the other knight. What's the difference? What's the difference? Okay, well, I've got to move one of them, don't I? And it was my instinct to do this one the whole time. Because it's not like the other one is hanging, right? Okay. Again, fingers crossed. Oh, good. Okay. That has to be that. All right. And now it doesn't matter what they do. I would take the rook on the next turn. Okay. New puzzle high. Thank you for sticking with me through this incredibly long puzzle solving video. I'm not going to edit out my long pauses and things like I did on some of the others because that takes a lot of work. In fact, that takes as much time for me as recording this entire video. I just did it on that one because I had gotten really frustrated at points. So I edited like 15 minutes, I think, out of one of those videos. But that takes a lot of work. So this one, I'm just going to leave it here. And maybe we'll have a crack at 2300 before too long. See you next time.